This episode of Tekzilla is sponsored by the fine people at GoDaddy.com, Drobo, and Netflix. You want to keep seeing Tekzilla? Do us a favor and support our sponsors. Coming up on this episode, Xbox 360 and Apple TV. Which one does a better job of letting you watch Tekzilla from the couch? Plus, 3 more ways to get the show. We're going to install Ubuntu because putting Linux on your PC shouldn't be painful. And we've got the best USB. Well, you know, it's just, we'll tell you in a second. It's a really cool tool for anybody that needs to image, access data, repair a spare hard drive, and a free utility that lets you discover what's loading up when Windows boots on your system. All that plus your viewer questions on today's Tekzilla. Welcome to Tekzilla. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Garnet Lee.
Are you excited?
Always, man. I'm always excited.
We've got a console here.
I know. I feel like I'm at home. There's a 360 there. It's like I'm in my living room getting ready to watch Tekzilla.
Apple TV versus Xbox 360 for subscribing to the podcast, which is why we're not talking about Voodoo on this one. We're not just talking about movie rentals. And we're going to have 3 other ways to actually get Tekzilla on a weekly basis. We've got a free utility that lets you discover what's loading up on your system. And it's a really nifty tool. And what else do we have?
Well, plus, did you use your camera? Guess what? We've got a helpful site that'll help people reconnect with their lost cameras and holiday photos. But before we begin...
Dun, 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 dun. According to Valleywag, Stephen Levy, a tech journalist, and this is painful. This is Stephen. If you're not familiar with Stephen Levy, he's a journalist for Newsweek, and apparently this hurts me to read. Inadvertently tossed out his MacBook Air along with a pile of newspapers it got mixed in with.
Well, wait 1 second. He didn't actually cop to losing it himself. He sort of accused his wife of maybe throwing it out in the newspapers. Apparently they're both neatniks, and one of them will come around the house very quickly, decide they have to throw out the newspapers, and he supposes that it might have been folded up in the newspaper.
Quote, as humiliating as it sounds, let me repeat, the MacBook Air is so thin that it got tossed out with the newspapers, end quote. Plus, in a separate incident, blogger Michael Nygaard wrote how the TSA made him miss his flight when they were unable to decipher that his MacBook Air was a notebook and not some strange, arcane, potentially improvised explosive device and security risk. Although I got to say, I've had some pretty hairy experiences with the TSA, including once where they actually scanned, because they're arguing, the younger guy was like, it's the MacBook Air, it's okay, it's a notebook, you guys, and the reporter specified that it was a younger person on the team. Apparently,
well, you know what?
Apple enthusiast.
Reading the report, I'm not sure whether I'm happy or unhappy, because one of the things they did point out was that the reason they were keyed in is that it didn't have the signature in the X-ray machine of a laptop. So it means that they do know what they're looking at. They know what they're looking for. So they're like, hey, this thing doesn't have a hard drive. It doesn't have the right ports on it. I think it's suspicious. We all know about MacBook Airs, but you know, maybe this guy didn't. Maybe it did look suspicious.
Well, you know what? It better safe than sorry, because I don't like planes falling out of the sky.
Me either.
That would be bad. Although, having spent 40 minutes having every device in my bag scanned and individually sniffed for, you know, I don't know, Semtex or something.
We're not even going to make you wait 40 minutes before we get to the viewer email. Here's what we have to say about last week's show. So last week we did that roundup of 2.1 PC speakers. And we know some of you let us know that we missed possibly the best PC speaker set round. That's the Logitech Z2300. Dario wrote in with this. Hello, I have the Logitech Z2300 speakers. These speakers are amazing and very powerful and full sounding. I live in the dorms in a corner room, and when I put the bass halfway up, I can hear it down the hall. They're THX certified, 35 hertz to 20,000 hertz, which is pretty good for 2.1, and they're great for gaming as well as music. Aaron also followed up saying that the Logitech Z2300 200 watts RMS 2.1 speaker system, this is an amazing speaker system. It's THX certified, 200 watts, and runs at about $100 online. I'm surprised it wasn't on the show. And finally, Steven emailed in with this. He said, hi guys, just saw your episode on computer speakers, and I think you should check out the Logitech Z2300s. These guys, they all like the Z2300s. We get it, right? Then he's like, it only got around $150 US and sounds better than my home theater system. I know from experience that it's more power than you need at half volume playing a bass test. It rattled the windows, lights, walls, and doors in my computer room.
Well, so depends on how big your computer room is.
Yeah. Are you going to get these things for review?
I don't know if we're going to get them in review, but we would like to pass out to everybody watching. If you're looking for a set of 2.1 speakers, obviously you should include the Logitech Z2300 in your short list to check out. And for everybody else who wrote in to say, why didn't you include my favorite brand of speakers, or these professional studio monitors, or my $10,000 home theater system, we'd love it that it sounds good for you. We were looking for commonly available major brands, and you know what? Next time we'll definitely take a look at Logitech.
I've heard them before. They're pretty good. They're
Not
very
bad.
bassy, very strong in the bass. I think a lot of people like that. Yeah. Anyway, thanks to sending in your comments and your questions, everyone. We want to get more of them, so if you want to get something off your chest or just show us something cool, you know where to email us. That's tekzilla@revision3.com.
Quite a few of you have been asking for a bit on installing Linux on the show. Since we aim to please, we're going to be installing Ubuntu and Linux right here on the show on, well, actually the $500 PC that's kind of bolted to the floor at the moment.
Bolted to the floor? Well, okay, well, and where are we going to start?
We can say cabled to the floor.
Oh, you got a cable on it?
It's, well, I mean, look at that. I don't even think it's safe to pick it up.
Yeah, probably not. You got a bunch of stuff down there. All right, so what do we got to have to do this?
300 megahertz x86 processor, so basically a PC, 64 megabytes of system memory. We suggest also that you go considerably faster than any of these, if possible. At least that's 4 gigabytes of disk space for full installation. And swap space, a VGA graphics card capable of 640 by 480 resolution, and a CD-ROM driver network card. Now, the recommended specs a little bit higher. A whopping 700 megahertz x86 processor, 384 megabytes of system. You're snickering, but it'll actually run with this. Unlike Windows XP or Vista, it will run on the minimum specs.
No, I think it's fantastic. I have boxes sitting in my closet that I could run this stuff on. It's fantastic.
10 by 7 graphics card resolution, a sound card, and a network or internet connection. Yes, a network or internet connection is always nice. Now, you need to copy the latest ISO disk. Now, you can get the latest stable ISO version up at the Ubuntu website. You can see the lower third for that down below. You're going to need a burner to burn out the install disk, or you can actually request a free install disk be sent to you from the Ubuntu folks. You're going to set your PC to boot from the CD/DVD drive in the BIOS. It's a little scary. You're going to have to hit delete or F2 to basically stop that. You're going to go over to the boot devices or BIOS devices, or we'll give you some links to that on the website you can check out, and set it so it'll boot first from the CD-ROM drive, then from the hard drive. That way, essentially, your computer looks, it sees the CD-ROM drive, it goes, there's an operating system disk in here, it stops, and it basically launches the install from the disk.
Far less scary than it sounds. If you've never been in your BIOS, it's not hard. No big deal.
Boot from the disk, and you're going to follow the on-screen instructions, which start out looking like that up there. You're going to need your keyboard and your mouse installed. I don't know if we mentioned that in the minimum specs on there. And the top option is install in text mode. If you want to install it over Windows XP, it's actually pretty easy to do if you want to dual boot.
Good deal.
As always, we want you to back up your data. 99.99% of the time, it's going to, non-destructive resizing your partition. It's going to move some space over, install itself perfectly. But just in case, make sure you back up that giant collection of MP3s, your term paper, the report you're working on at the office.
I'd have to start backing up to.
Yes.
I'm one of those people.
We'll talk about that later on. The other thing you can do, actually, it's got a really cool version where you can install it into a file on your Windows XP installation. So you can actually sort of store everything inside of Windows XP, and it'll run and launch from that basically folder.
That sounds slick.
It's very slick. Should we hit enter and see what comes next?
We should get started.
Okay.
Because it's going to take a little while. And
so you've hit enter, and this is the kind of the fun part. This is, make sure you have the right keyboard. For us, we're going to pick the United States Ubuntu installer. We're not going to detect the keyboard layout. It's great if you're using a Cyrillic language, US English, US English. It's going to detect, it's going to find the CD-ROM drive. All this is pretty basic, right? If you can follow text instructions, you're doing pretty good. It's going to launch into the CD-ROM drive.
Still scanning.
I'll wake you up when it's ready.
Still scanning.
But you might miss the partitioning part.
Oh, I don't want to miss the partitioning.
Well,
you know how I am about my partitioning.
It looks a little scary. I mean, we've actually got emails from people.
Someone bring me coffee to go with my partitioning? I always have coffee with my partitioning.
Look, we're loading additional components.
Excellent.
You just don't get this kind of thing on the broadcast networks. Detecting hardware, PC card services, configuring the network with a DHCP, which should be working.
Friends, we got one
don't
of them
let
plugs
friends
in there.
Woo! Network auto configuration has succeeded. Ubuntu.Tekzilla. You're going to name your computer. You're perfectly free to leave it named Ubuntu if you want. More detecting PC services. If you're a Linux expert, you've already run off and installed this on 3 machines. If you're not a Linux expert, partitioning, watching the guided partitioning is critical. Have it guide you through the partitioning. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Right now, though, time to pay the bills?
Let's do it.
We want to thank, ladies and gentlemen, every single sponsor on the show, and it would do us a huge favor if you would support them. If you're interested in getting some movies to your house, we would love it if you would sign up with Netflix. And actually, Netflix, we got the sign-up thing. We're actually going to start a movie group here on Tekzilla, and we're going to call it the Netflix Movie Pick of the Week. Mr. Roger Chang, our producer at large, the series producer, the man, the myth, the legend, the puppet master that speaks in my ear and tells me to move on, says King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters is going to be our first movie. It's a documentary about the holder of the highest score in Donkey Kong and his rivalry with a man who hopes to unseat him from the Donkey Kong throne. If you love geek drama, this movie has it all, including the little-known World of Classic video game competition. Disc has a few nice extras too. It's great for families and single adult males with dreams of gaining top honors in video gaming and where you might end up if you never leave the house. And don't forget, if you're craving movie rentals without driving to the store, you should definitely check out Netflix.com. 90,000 titles online, including an incredible pile of Blu-ray titles, 40 centers around it, because basically they mail them to your house, 40 centers around the United States. Plan starts at $4.99. But as a Tekzilla viewer, do us a favor, get a free trial by signing up at www.netflix.com/Tekzilla. And do us a favor, make us your friend on Netflix and share us your movie picks. Just shoot us an invite to Tekzilla@revision3.com and we'll get a whole little circle going.
Hey, I saw the partitioning come up there on the big window. What do we got going on now?
If you are a Linux newbie, if you are unfamiliar with Linux,
That's
if
me.
you are uptight about installing Linux, Ubuntu has something wonderful. It's the guided partitioning. And you basically, you notice, if you were installing over Windows XP, right, it might say resize IDE 1 master partition 1. So if you have something on the hard drive you want to save, you're going to use that resizing the partition. Now, if you're wiping it, this is a Linux-only computer, if you're wiping out your old operating systems, go for the use entire disk. We're going to hit enter on that one.
So you're using the whole disk here.
Yes, for
For that
this one-
first option would let me slip it in next to an existing window install.
Well, yeah, basically next to an existing partition. It could be another operating system. It could be who knows what. But in this case, we're going to use the entire disk. So, and we only have a single hard drive on this machine, so we've obviously found it there. It's going to scan. So this is the moment of truth. This is the moment where Ubuntu the install is going to Ubuntu the install.
Ubuntu the install.
It's like a double feature with King Kong or King of Kong. It's basically going to ask you like 19 times, are you sure you want to format this disk, because it doesn't want you to wipe out something by accident. So you're going to check the partitioning table, okay, and it's going to say the following partitions are going to be formatted. Just do what the nice install says. If it's the right hard drive, IDE 1 master, it's basically your main hard drive in the system. We're going to hit yes, and it's creating the file system. Configure the times, and you can go back. The go back basically takes you back to the main menu, and it can be soothing to go back. Sometimes you want to check yourself before
Absolutely.
you wreck yourself. Did I say that?
You just did.
System clock, universal time coordinated, no. We set ours locally, so we're going to say no to that. Full name for the new user, Tekzilla. Continue. Username for your account, Tekzilla. Choose a password.
Remember, use a good strong password.
Actually, I'm using a weak password, so we'll all know what it is on the set. But normally, yes, I would use a password with numbers and letters and asterisks and special characters and who knows what all else. It's
right.
going to crunch for a while.
We're heading forward again. Ubuntu before the end of the show.
Yay.
We've shown USB to hard drive adapters before, but newer technology's USB 2.0 universal drive adapter sets a new bar. The $30 gadget includes 2.5 and 3.5 inch IDE adapters for older desktop and notebook hard drives. It'll work with desktop optical drives, and it includes serial ATA support for newer drives all in one unit. They call it a Swiss Army knife of disk connectivity, and we agree. The lights that indicate power and which drive is being accessed are a handy detail we've missed on cheaper no-brand adapters. On the downside, the power supply is bigger than the adapter. If you're not careful, you could lose the nifty power cable adapter for serial ATA drives. But if you're a serious Mac or PC tech that regularly finds yourself needing to plug into all kinds of drives for your Mac or PC, or you want access to heaps of storage without buying a case for each drive, newer technology's USB 2.0 universal drive adapter is a most excellent option.
Be it on an Apple TV, Xbox 360, notebook, desktop PC, or, and this is new, your cell phone, there's a ton of ways to bring Tekzilla into your life besides watching the flash video on the website. So we figured we'd give you a little one-on-one on how to watch Tekzilla on a number of different platforms and even ways of subscribing to it. Here to help me is my co-explainer and puppet master, Mr. Roger Chang.
You're too generous. Puppet master is such a benign term.
Benign term.
Yes, in fact, I had to crawl out from the back and leave our PA in charge of the studio.
Seraphina's in charge of the studio?
Yes, you'll magically see things happen to me that may, should, or never should happen to me.
No tickets. No drinking while we're gone.
But we're going to explain to you how to get our show, not exactly in this wonderful Apple TV manner that he's so proud of.
This is not my personal Apple TV. This is the one out of our. I don't know. Well, we'll plug in the Xbox 360.
Yeah,
for
you
now.
know, and it's funny because the Xbox isn't mine either. I have one at home, but it just works fine. Fine, I tell you.
No red ring of death on that. And,
No.
we should also point out we're talking a little bit more about the Apple TV and the Xbox 360 in a few moments, but we understand that there are many fervent, dedicated fans of both platforms for entertainment and amusement, and probably also the PS3. I believe a
Yes.
number of viewers own those.
So if you're
also.
going to flame us, put that in the subject line.
Yeah.
Flame Xbox or flame Apple TV, and if you want, flame PS3.
Anyhow, if you're not familiar with it, you see the little orange icons with the radiating sound thing on them. Those are the links for RSS feeds, really simple syndication. And you can use it to subscribe to any of the different formats of the show.
Oh, nice.
So you can have updates on all of the different versions that are available. And if you take a look at our website, you're going to go down to that second tab across the bottom for subscription options. And there's a bunch of buttons in there. There's two of them that we're particularly fond of, Moreau and iTunes. And those will actually launch the application. Moreau, it'll tell you it'll actually take you to the Moreau page to download it. Moreau is a content aggregator. It's a viewer. It'll look at your RSS feeds. It's a way to find new programming maybe you're not familiar with, and it's a way to download it automatically.
And it's cross-platform, OS 10,
Cross-platform.
Windows.
In theory, Linux, although I haven't seen it running on Linux. But it definitely works
2 out of
on
3 isn't bad.
OS 10 and Windows, and quite well of those two. A bunch of you have been using that since we showed it off a few weeks ago. It's pretty slick, because basically you can subscribe to shows, the downloads will automatically show up inside the Moreau player, and you can watch them inside of the Moreau player.
Nice.
Yes.
And then Apple's iTunes is similar. You launch the application, and then you can go through the Apple Store. Am I correct in that? And you can search for
Click on the
text.
podcast link.
Click on the podcast link, and you can actually have that receive on a regular basis. Our lovely, fantastic show produced by me.
Yay.
Not
Now,
to-
so you have an RSS reader. If you
Yes.
just want to know when the new shows come out or when the Tekzilla dailies come out, and for all of you in the forums who have been asking and all of you have emailed, yes, we are working on getting separated feeds for Tekzilla, the weekly show, and Tekzilla daily. I don't know when those are arriving, but it is in the queue with our engineers who basically they've completed the new website. They're doing some maintenance on the back end on our servers, which is exciting. If you noticed a little bit of a slowdown earlier this week. And when that's done, it's going to work its way up to the top of the queue. I know it's not as fast as everybody would like, and I apologize, but those will be there shortly. But you can actually you basically right-click, copy the link location, right, and drop that into the access for your RSS reader. In this case, what you're seeing on the screen is the fabulous Google Reader, which
nice.
I use pretty regularly.
So using that, but you won't be able to actually watch or listen through
Well,
that.
basically, if you click on that, it'll open up in the web page, and it'll launch the Tekzilla web page, and you
Got
can go
it.
from there. But you could use the fabulously automated Moreau or iTunes, or actually Zune. The Zune software will do the same thing.
And you
quite a
watch
few
it
others.
within that application.
Yes. Something absolutely brand spanking new. We actually have something pretty slick, and I don't know if we can do a close-up on that one, but it's m.revision3.com, which is the fabulous new mobile adaptation for this. So basically, you load it in your web browser. We've been having some fun with this. It works extremely well on iPhones,
It doesn't work extremely well with Roger's BlackBerry Pearl.
but their tech support is working on that. So it'll actually, you can log in and create an account with them. We're just going to show you watching the latest shows, or if you go to all shows, it'll give you the directory of all the Revision 3 shows. What do you want to watch?
I don't know, Lost in Space. Oh, our show.
How about System?
Yes.
System's good. System builds a canon. How's that? And play it, and it will. You basically share it, save it to your phone, and I like the. Depending on your data plan, your mobile operator may apply additional charges when you watch videos. So if you don't have an unlimited data plan, be careful. Click here to continue, and it'll start downloading in this type a fabulous QuickTime video to play.
Cool.
And they have a list of supported phones. We'll have that up in the show notes.
Oh, it's you. How
Yeah.
odd.
How meta. How recursive.
Yes. Now, let's move over to the Xbox, because it's basically the only device that I have that can be considered a set-top box.
Okay, and there are Windows Media Center extenders. Neither one of
yep.
us are pretty. They
No.
work. If they work for you, great. Email us. Tell us all about it at Tekzilla@revision3.com.
You can this actually does double duty as an extender as well.
It's pretty slick.
As long as you do the updates to it. Now, if you got one of those, you bought one, launch day, and you haven't done a single update to it, no, it's not going to work. However, with the most recent update, it actually supports a multitude of formats, including my favorite, DivX and XVID, as well as H.264 and a couple all of the QuickTime formats. Now, if you can see here on the screen, I actually have 3 of them, all the exact same show, episode 22.
You put them on a USB thumb drive.
Yes, you can put them on a USB thumb drive, or if you want, you can actually attach via network to your Windows PC. All you need to do is have Windows XP or Vista and Windows Media Player 11, and you just need to share within that library and put on the same network. It will find the device. Actually, let me bump out of this real quick, and you can see how Roger Chang is my laptop that I serve content off of. All I needed to do was install Windows Media Player 11, share the media, and anything that plays within Windows Media Player 11 will play on this.
Cool.
So you can stream data, whether it's a movie, a podcast, or anything. In this case, because it's a thumb drive, I'm going to have to go to the portable device. I have our 3 shows, exact same show, different formats. We have our H.264, our WMV, and of course our XVID. So all I need to do is resume because I was watching because it's such a great show. I'm going to resume from where I was, and as you can see, it's Garnet, post past week. And if I want, I can just kind of scrub through this using the handy dandy bar, as you notice at the top.
Have you tried doing this sort of the HD QuickTime version?
Yes. Actually, let me bump back.
Or I should say, which one do you think looks best?
I like the XVID, and that's because I'm partial to XVID. The H.264, for some reason, on the 360 doesn't look as crisp as it does in a standard desktop player.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's the way they wrote the decoder for the 360. The XVID does look the best.
That's looking awfully blocky.
But that being said, the XVID version works a lot better, and of course you're not limited to this as well. Now the downside to all of this is you're going to have to download each show individually or episode individually,
right,
and then store them either on a USB drive or USB thumb drive, or put it on the network and then serve it off your Windows Media Player. You will not be able to do an RSS unless you do a multi-tiered RSS reader downloads, and then you have Windows Media Player 11 pick it up.
So, do we see if the Apple TV is alive or dead?
Let's see if it's alive. Oh, I will take the cord. Now, of course, we should mention this thing's been running 24/7 for the past 3 months.
In our conference room of doom, where it's normally about 40 degrees, but apparently
Uncle Steve's technicians might need a little tuning. Oh, wait a minute.
Did it
Is it
come
working?
up?
It's black screen.
Don't touch it again.
Normally a black screen means bad things, but for the Apple TV, it's good.
There we go. So in this case, we're actually sharing it on there, and we have a high definition version. Should we use System or Tekzilla?
Let's go with Tekzilla so people can.
I'm so sorry.
Well, they're all have feature the same people.
I have it downloaded on a machine on our network. This is accessing it remotely. And the video quality, and we should point out the video quality on these, and actually for movies you're purchasing, is really all dependent on the encoding at their end.
Yeah.
And it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty clean. The guy's kind of goofy looking.
I can actually agree with that statement. But as you can see, for the most part, the Apple TV's interface is very similar to iTunes. So if you're used to iTunes, you're going to be very comfortable with this interface. I don't mind the 360. If you're not a gamer, it's probably not something you would go with. But if you have one, there's no point in picking up something extra like an Apple TV and spending the money on the extra. Was it $400?
It's actually dropped considerably in price.
Oh, to
under $300 now for the
nice,
version.
under $300. Still wouldn't buy one.
And
but
yeah, well, we should point out, I have one at home that I've never had the overheating problems we were just seeing, but it's pretty slick. You can add in your favorites. You can actually, we would be streaming these now, and you can search the podcast. So these are all people who watch the fabulous Totally Rad show, also watched Callie Lewis's Geek Break TV, the Mac show.
And this is something you don't get with the 360. I mean, overall, in summation, you do have a variety of options. You do have Moreau, you have iTunes. Those are pretty simple ways to get the show on your desktop and running. If you already have a 360, you already have an Apple TV, those are also great ways, especially if you want to sit on the couch and watch the show without having to be right in front of your computer screen.
Check it out, we found NASA video. That's one of the nice things about Moreau or iTunes or the Apple TV is the opportunity to explore and find more stuff.
All right, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, Patrick, you wanted to mention the popcorn and quit pointing at the screen.
I'm searching. I'm searching the iTunes store.
This popcorn has an RSS reader? What's this popcorn thing?
Okay, the popcorn, it's typical of it's one of the better versions of some devices we're seeing. They're showing up on eBay, they're showing up in computer stores that are dedicated set-top boxes for video playback. This one's got an RSS reader. We're going to talk a bunch more about that in another week or two after we've got it set up and they do another software.
Something about bills, Patrick, we have to do something about.
Yes. let's take a moment to shout out to one of our sponsors, Data Robotics Drobo. I am a Data Robotics owner. I should say I'm not the company. I actually own a Data Robotics Drobo, and actually I'm pretty impressed with it. Do us a favor, if you're thinking about using a RAID-type backup device, consider Data Robotics Drobo. If you're looking for a better way to store your data, it's definitely worth considering. It's infinitely expandable and much easier to upgrade than most RAID devices, and it provides RAID-like reliability without the nightmare of administration. That's a big plus. Self-monitoring, self-healing, and a pretty easy to understand visual status and alert panel. That's the big shiny buttons on the front. It's about the easiest way I know of to do redundant backing up of your data. As in, if one of the hard drives dies, you slide a new hard drive in, it magically reconstructs the data, and you go on and on. And it basically, want to add up a larger hard drive, add more space, yank an old drive out, put a new one in, you're good to go. It's going to take a little time, but you know what? It's pretty painless. It's also been awarded the highest CNET rating for storage ever. It works. It's definitely worth checking out. And you can save $50 if you purchase one by mentioning the discount code Tekzilla when you go to purchase one. Do us a favor, if you're thinking about buying a backup device, a big honking one, you want a redundant backup system, you might want to consider Drobo. And if you do us a favor, enter in the Tekzilla code.
If you've been searching for a more complete way to figure out what applications start up when Windows boots, look no further than AutoRuns. AutoRuns is a powerful utility that, quotes, shows you what programs are configured to run during system boot up or login, and shows you the entries in the order Windows processes them. Once downloaded, all you need to do is to unzip the file and double-click. No installation required. After AutoRun launches, you can access the various boot entries based on the order of the boot sequence they started. For example, to see what applications launched during the login process, click on the Login tab. For every entry, you have the ability to view the properties of each file, check online to see what the file exactly does, open its entry in the registry, verify, and of course delete. You can also output and save AutoRun scans of your system for comparison as you install additional applications on your system as time goes on. Make no mistake, AutoRuns can be a source of problems if you're not familiar with the various entries. Do not delete anything without first checking out what it is beforehand. If you've been looking for the most complete way of parsing out the various applications and processes that launch during the Windows boot sequence, look no further than AutoRuns.
Patrick, the Ubuntu. Are we going to finish this? We're going to finish this
Yes.
show, right?
Look, it spit the disk out.
I see that.
You have to remember to remove. If you do not remove the disk before it restarts, installation is complete. Time to boot a new system. Make sure to remove whatever you're booting the device off of originally. Otherwise, it'll go back in the installation mode. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to restart, and there's going to be magic.
And then we're going to have Ubuntu system. We're ready to roll.
Yes. Although that always scares me, sending sig kill to all processes. That's Linux for I'm shutting myself down. So when it restarts, we're going to find out whether or not it recognized our wireless card, but it should recognize most of our hardware.
Beautiful Asus motherboard, ready to roll. Hopefully the boot time's a little faster than the average Windows system.
So, while it's rebooting,
Yes, sir.
do you use Linux?
I am actually a complete Linux neophyte with great apology. I do love the Penguins. Love the Penguins. I have not used it. I am not familiar with Unix shell commands. I'm one of those people that I see sig kill and I go, oh crap, what did I do?
Yeah. So the machine's rebooting.
Going to take it a couple of minutes. You want to take a little break?
I think it's a good idea, and we take some time to thank one of our fabulous sponsors. Let's give a shout out to GoDaddy.com. If you want to make an impact online, do it with GoDaddy.com. Why? Well, because pretty much everybody we know uses it. .com names cheap, below $1.99. Plus, world-class hosting, fast and easy website builders. My wife doesn't use the website builders, but she does use the hosting and quite a bit more. And if you enter in the code TECH5 when you buy basically goods and services from the fine folks at GoDaddy.com, you have an opportunity to help support us at Revision 3, specifically Tekzilla, and you're going to save $10 off any order of $40 or more. Do us a favor, support us by supporting them.
Have you ever lost a camera or a memory stick with all your vacation photos? Well, you just might have a chance at getting them back. Visit ifoundyourcamera.blogspot.com and browse the pictures that people have sent in. If you yourself have found a camera or a memory stick, choose one or two of the most distinctive photos from the batch and send them to the email address on the site. Include any helpful details like location, date, or landmark. In a few days, they'll be up on the site waiting to be recognized. If the owner does come across their photos, they'll contact the site's owner, who will then put the two of you in touch. And it works, too! You can see several examples of this on the site of people who have found their photos long after giving up on them. Of course, a site like this relies on exposure to be effective, so check out the archives, see if you recognize anybody, and maybe you'll be able to help reunite some lost, lonely photos with their owners.
Look at that.
It's Ubuntu! Yay!
It lives.
So we're going to ask you right now, if you have Linux questions, installing applications, what applications should you run? Should I be running OpenOffice, something else? What should I do with this? Definitely email those out to us. I'm going to hit the button here to install the 196 updates that are available, mostly for GNOME. Oh, there's the CupSys client, I don't know what all this is, but I'm going to install it just for fun anyway.
So while that's working and people are coming up with their other Linux questions, Patrick, tell me just as a starting spot, why would I want to use Linux over my Vista or XP setup?
Well, I can think of a number of reasons. Having had some Vista issues in my lifestyle, what's interesting, and I can say I've had some Linux issues in my lifestyle too, and some XP and some OS X issues. Basically, what's interesting, it's open source. It's a free operating system. You don't have to pay money for it. Because people actually get it. It's free. You don't have to pay money for it.
So that's cool. So if I have parts sitting around the house, I can put together a box. I don't have to worry about going out and buying a license, and I can put together the system.
Exactly. So if you're building a machine on the cheap, if you don't have a lot of money, this is a great way to basically bundle it all together, because hardware is useless without an operating system. Two, it's open source and it's Linux, which means it's a popular avenue of entry into a lot of IT. Most of the web actually is running on Linux servers. So if you want to be an Apache, so if you want to, if you're thinking about an IT career, learning how all of the insides of Linux configuration, which basically means living in a command line environment and spending a lot of time figuring out what all of the different commands, and we could go on this. Just email us questions.
Think we'll get some suggestions for media extenders on Linux?
I think we probably will. And what's up next?
I don't know. I think we're going to take some more questions. You ready for that?
Abso-smurfly.
All right, let's do some more questions. The first one up is from Paul. He asks us, I'm confused over the whole digital broadcast TV thing and how it's going to affect cable TV. When the plug is pulled on the analog TV broadcast, will I be forced to switch to digital cable, or will my analog cable still be safe?
That's actually a great question.
It is. You were chuckling a little bit, but it is a good question, because he's not going to have to do anything different, right?
The basically is the powers that be, the FCC, they want the analog bandwidth back that's currently being used for television, the television we've been watching for a bazillion years. So what they are doing is basically shutting down analog television broadcasts. So your local broadcaster is switching to a digital broadcast, which you can most likely access now. Is that going to impact your cable? Not at all. Your local cable provider, basically, they make the decision whether they're using an analog box or a digital box, and that's all up to your local cable provider, or maybe if it's a bigger cable provider, the people in the home office. But
So,
you are safe.
But ultimately, you're going to want to change to digital eventually.
Well, sometimes I like that thought, right? So, I'm going to get my phone and my internet access, and I'm going to have pay-per-view, and I'm going to have 175,000 channels on my digital cable, because it's, it's compressed. It takes up considerably less bandwidth to put a channel of television digitally than it does in analog format. The flip side is analog, you always get, and it's SD, so it's kind of relative. And with analog, you always get the quality, like the best quality. Or you know what I mean? So there's a quality level usually with analog that sometimes you don't get, because when somebody goes from 25 or 36 channels of analog television to 125 channels of digital, some of those channels, a lot of the ones that are targeted for kids or geeks or history buffs, tend to get compressed a little bit more than others.
Oh, sure, that makes sense. So they're using a whole lot of compression on it. Well,
HBO gets a lot of bandwidth. The fishing channel, maybe not so much, unless the guy that runs the local cable shop is a big fan of the fishing channel.
pick up something new every day. We've got another question. This one comes in from Tim. He says, I would like to build a system soon, and since RAM is cheap and I always need more RAM, I thought about installing Vista 64 on it. When Vista came out, I heard a lot of warnings that the 64-bit version is basically broken, since you couldn't find working drivers. Did that change, and would you recommend using Vista 64-bit? Well, I mean, he's got two questions here. I like his first one. RAM is cheap. It's a great time to build a PC.
For most people, if you're running a 32-bit operating system, which includes the 32-bit version of Vista or XP, 2 gigabytes is more than enough RAM. You should be pretty happy with that.
Absolutely.
In fact, there's hardware limitations. This question kind of keeps coming back on the show. The chances are you're only going to see like 3 to 3.5 gigabytes of that RAM max. 2 gigabytes should be fine. I would not go to, unless I was buying all new hardware with the 64-bit version of Vista pre-installed, I would not move to a 64-bit version of Vista. You know what I mean? If he's not video editing or audio editing or working with gigantic Photoshop files.
You're looking for anything that, if you have a case where you can get optimized applications for 64-bit operating system, absolutely, you're going to see an advantage. But without that, stick to 32-bit. Better drivers, better support. just an easier life overall. You're going to operate much more happily like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have older software. If it's getting tough to find new XP drivers for your hardware, now, especially if you have older software and older hardware. If you have a bunch of older hardware you're trying to upgrade, chances are 64-bit Vista is going to be painful and force you to upgrade a lot of your hardware.
Absolutely.
Skip it. Please, please, please don't forget to write us with your questions, your answers, your suggestions, your comments. We live to serve up to a point, of course. But do us a favor, send emails to us at tekzilla@revision3.com. And if you need to talk to other fans about topics covered at the show, visit our forums at revision3.com/forum. And do us a favor, don't forget to check out previous episodes of Tekzilla. They're just waiting to be rewatched at revision3.com/tekzilla or tekzilla.com. More details, as always, on the site in the show notes. Coming up next show, upgrading your laptop. We're going to be covering processor upgrades, memory upgrades, expansion cards, drives. Plus, we're going to tell you if upgrading your laptop is even a worthwhile expenditure of cash or just a bottomless money pit and a waste of your time. And as always, your stack of viewer emails, questions, and comments coming up on the next episode of Tekzilla. Thank you all so much for watching. And before we go, I want to thank Garnet for stopping by and helping us out. OneUp.com.
Absolutely.
What's the name of that?
Always enjoy being on, but I cannot help you with the PS3 folks. They're going to be coming after you on that little
Why don't you come and show?
thing.
You were talking about how all this amazing PS3 television, PSP sharing.
It's called Remote Play with your PSP. Once you've paired a PSP with a PS3, you can access your stuff remotely. It's pretty slick.
Can a PS3 access an RSS feed directly?
I will have to get back with you on that because I access all my RSS feeds on my PC, but I believe it can.
You're going to be back to talk PS3 as a media extender?
Absolutely, and
I
PSP.
like that. Until next time, you've been watching Tekzilla. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Garnet Lee.